Hey everybody, I am with Latrice Knighton today. Latrice, I've known you for a while. I was thinking about how long I've known you.
Years.
Years?
Yes.
I'm going to guess 3?
Probably.
4?
3 or 4.
Okay, good, we're on the same page. I feel bad when I feel like I'm a little off on that. Latrice is an attorney. She works for Sterling Law Offices.
Yes.
And I wanted to just ask her a few things and share what you do, how you help people, and some tips too would be really, really cool. So if you could start by telling me, first of all, how long you've been in the industry, what exactly do you do, kind of how do you help people, and whatever you would like to share. So,
sure.
Yeah.
So I've been a divorce attorney for 10 years, but I've been practicing longer than that.
Okay.
So I do 95% of my practices, I'm helping couples through divorce. So I'm either representing one party or I'm a mediator helping parties decide how they want to divide their estate, share their kids. So I can serve as more of a neutral role, but with an education on helping them fill out the paperwork. So that's what a mediator really does.
So more mediation than anything?
I would say right now a lot more people are moving to mediation. I still do more traditional, like representing one party, but I think a lot of people are starting to see like, hey, if we can have this conversation, just have someone guide us. Number one, it'll save us on stress, so that I'm not worried about going to court and battling it out. We can actually have a conversation with each other, and especially if you're raising kids, you're just like, you don't want communication to completely go to the dumps because you have to raise kids together. And just saving money on not paying for 2 attorneys because you're battling it out in court. If we can like come in a room together and just talk about possible resolutions and have someone guide them and give them ideas about what the court would or would not do, or just give them suggestions because they've never been in this place before. That's how a mediator really helps people. It's those people who really want to try to figure out themselves and then need some help.
Interesting. You've been doing this 10 years, so do you feel like there's less mediation 10 years ago?
Oh, absolutely.
Why do you think a shift?
I think slowly people are starting to not, they're worrying about fighting. They're worrying about the fees, where I think before they just thought they had to fight it out. Mediation is just now slowly people are learning about what it is. It's kind of hard to retrain like just the general public too, because normally you think of hiring an attorney you're going to do a battle, but attorneys have more skills than that. It's just like we do more problem solving than actually fighting in court, because most attorneys' litigation is a very small percentage. We're normally negotiating out agreements.
Interesting.
So now it's just hard to get that word mediation. What does that mean? And putting a new thing in the world is just taking time, I think.
It's probably a good thing then that the attorney's getting exposure to more of their benefits and the other services you say they can help with. Right. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, because if I think about the old school way, you're getting divorced, you better get an attorney. You better fight for this, and that. Like that's the reaction immediately.
Yep.
Right?
And I still think there's still that initial reaction in everyone. Sure. Because you're not certain you're worried what the other person's going to do. You don't want to be hurt every more, regardless of who kind of decided that. So I think gut reaction is, I need to get an attorney, I need to protect myself. But then, you wait a couple days and then you think about it. I think a lot of couples do, like, well, maybe we can talk this out. Right. But I want to make sure this is kind of like done right. So they don't really always know what that means. So then if they've had someone who's done mediation, or they Google it and somehow get to what mediation is, our firm website kind of describes it. And we actually talk about it a lot on phone calls. Like, do you think you and your spouse can sit in a room and talk it out? Like, we do promote it too, because it's, less costly, to be honest. So, and then you get more of like a final product at the end, rather than like worrying about a trial. Right. You're getting the documents done.
That's cool. That's cool. That gives them peace of mind too. I hear plan a lot in the divorce world. You know what I mean when I say that? Like, people want to plan.
Yeah, they want to budget. They want to know what the kid's schedule is. They just want to know, because they're thinking like, okay, when I leave the house, and that's why I refer you work, like, where am I going to live? Can I afford to live somewhere? What's the schedule going to be like? How we're going to share the kids. So they're really forward thinking, but then worrying at the same time. So I think that's why people traditionally would go to litigation, because they just thought they had to fight about it. But now it's like, well, say those worries. In mediation, where you talk about it, like, oh, so what are you concerned about? Well, your spouse is concerned about this. How can we get an agreement where you guys are kind of getting both your needs met? So I think just a different train of thought.
Yeah. I'm curious now that in in that meeting, do you feel most people open up with what they want or upset about? Or most don't? Okay.
I mean, I don't think they get what you don't want, is not a good mediation is a rehash of every problem. I think people kind of get what the goal is because we talk about it like in each of these meetings. This day we're just going to talk about financial stuff. And this day we're going to kind of go back to kids.
Day or a topic day.
Yeah, you get homework. Like, here's what we're going to talk about. So at least there's some prep where we're not just talking about anything. But then at the same time, then they bring up, well, if you take this account, then I won't have as much retirement. Or if you keep the house, I don't know where I'm going to live because there's no apartments nearby that are affordable. Like, so then they're having that conversation. Of course, you can't split a house. So at some point we have to help the parties get to like an agreement on what they're going to do, but they like the plan.
That's good. It seems that helps them see the light at the end of the tunnel per se, right? And then the finish line.
Yep.
Because I would think a lot of people already feel like this is going to be a long journey, especially in the very beginning.
Oh yeah.
Mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, all these things, right? It's just overwhelming. So whatever they can do to grasp and make it better, which is planning or one step at a time
And I would say mediation is a quicker process, way quicker than starting a court action and waiting for a first hearing, because normally I'm getting couples in and out of mediations in 6 weeks. So they're like done. They don't see me again. They have their agreement.
It sounds pretty fast. It's a good thing.
No, it makes your anxiety go down.
Okay, sure.
So then less of that worry about what the future looks like, because just the way the court system's set up, because of the number of cases that are going in, it's just a long periods of time in between cases. So we could probably be done with your mediation months before you get in front of the judge, but at least your agreement's done.
Right.
So that's why people like mediation.
Interesting. It's kind of the concept of work on what you can control. You can't control the courts, right? It is what it is. It's piled with case loads, I'm assuming, right? And not much you can do there.
Right.
So, yeah. Interesting. So tell me, if you could, you've been doing this 10 years. You've seen a lot. You've seen amazing things. You've seen crazy things, I'm sure. I would say just give me a broad tip, unless you have a specific tip for somebody. And I'm thinking of the person that is just thinking about a divorce. It hasn't yet made an announcement.
Right.
Is there any good preparation that you feel as an attorney they could do to prepare for that?
I think the people who are the most scared and feel overwhelmed are the people who don't start collecting like documents or have any ideas of what the financial situation looks like.
Okay.
Because then they can't plan, housing, making sure they have enough food and money to cover bills. So I would say that, that person really should look at the actual statements that are coming in and just, write down account number and an estimate. And of course, accounts go up and down, but at least just knowing what it is then doesn't make you feel like you have to rely on waiting for your significant other, if you guys start fighting, to then give them the documents back or give you the information. You don't have to wait on an attorney doing a discovery demand to order that someone give the documents. At least it gives you some calmness, I think, of, hey, at least here's what I think. This might be a year old, but I knew we had an Edward Jones account. We had this bank account. I think we have
idea.
Right.
Okay.
And to be honest, many couples, one person does more of the financial stuff, and the majority of all the divorces, there are some people where they're kind of like meeting monthly because maybe they're both accountants and they like Excel, but normally you got a lot of people where one person's doing more. One person's paying all the bills every month, and so they don't have as much familiarity, and so then that's when that person gets nervous, because the other spouse always wrote the check every month. The other spouse organized the statements.
I can completely agree with that, because I see it on the mortgage side of things. When I have clients, when it's a couple, there's always the one contact. Because they're the one that know all the financials, the debts, the goals, the everything. So if I think about, if they were ever split, one is not going to...
Nope.
I mean, who knows what they talk about at the dinner table, right? They might share X, Y, and Z, but there's always one person knows everything, and the other one is partial.
Right. Or even where all the documents are, like, I know we have that, but I don't know where the documents are. And the other spouse is like, it's in that shelf in It's the basement.
The third drawer,
Right.
Yeah.
So stack right there.
That's funny.
Right.
So how about a tip then for people who are like in the middle of the process? Because I'm sure you get, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just observing people in a DIY world. They've done all kinds of online stuff. They talk to their sister and whoever that might give them advice. They started the process together as DIY as possible. Then they come to you and say, you know what, this is too much. I need your help. Do you have any advice on that piece? Or
yeah, I mean, I would say that if you're doing it yourself or starting it off initially, I'd say the most important part is actually putting pen to paper. Because I think people generally think they have an agreement until we put it down on a piece of paper.
I feel like there's a lot of verbal agreements.
Yeah, you know, like they think their spouse is going to agree to something, and then they get super confident that someone's going to reach an agreement, and I'm like, it's not till we actually see it on paper. Because sometimes people, when you're really stressed out, you hear different things just because you're just stressed. So maybe one spouse like listed off all the conditions in order for you to keep the home, and you just heard keep the home.
Yeah.
And so then disagreements can start happening because you're just hearing different things or just overwhelmed. So sometimes people I think really truly think they have an agreement. And then it's like when, especially even in mediation, for instance, they come in because they think they can get one. And then once kind of we get down to the nitty-gritty final details that we need in a court document, they don't have one. So, you know, I wouldn't want people going around drafting their own documents or laying out their agreement because they kind of don't always understand all the terms.
Right, here's our agreement we signed last night.
Right. But just have an understanding that, you know, you guys are maybe close, but you need someone to look it over.
Oh, sure.
And put it down. Because I think that's when people start getting frustrated. Like they're trying to do it themselves, they think they have an agreement, and there's just those final details that, you know, I think it's a lot of times it is innocent.
Yeah.
They just are hearing different things or thinking different things. Like, yeah, I meant you can keep the home if you did X, Y, and Z. And then, you know, they just don't follow through or someone doesn't do anything.
I think it's really good because some people are worried about cost. There's this perception that it's going to cost me a lot of money. And if there's a service where they feel comfortable, maybe it's where mediation comes in, like, hey, figure out what you think is going to agree, write it down, but let me look it over.
Right.
Maybe that'll help with time, maybe money, you know, all these things. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, mediation isn't, you know, mediation normally start from the beginning, whereas media is drafting everything.
Okay.
But we do a service where only one party can come in because it's called coaching.
Okay.
You can't coach a couple, per se. Someone brings in the paperwork and is like, hey, is this saying what I mean it to say?
Yeah.
And then you're like, let me look it over. And so then they'll kind of decide, do I need more documents to be looked over? Because, yeah, it is somewhat cost. You know, if you're close to an agreement, you don't need an attorney to go in and fight in a courtroom or negotiate out a deal, but you just need it to say what it needs to say. I would say, if you're doing it yourself, just have an attorney look at it.
Yeah.
So
I would recommend that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because the state forms that people find online, there's nothing that I as an attorney don't use them because there's like always these little details we put in. So it will normally solidify your agreements. Normally I'll say, well, you're close if I look at a state form.
Yeah.
Here's what else I think you mean.
Sure.
And you should probably attach something to this and write exactly these things.
Sure.
So
interesting.
Saves on money.
Saves on money. Yeah. Cool. Appreciate those tips. Those are really good. Is there anything else you would like to share? Anything that you feel I might not have asked you that you see a lot out there with the clients you come across or conversations?
Well, I just want people to understand that, you know, your divorce is very personal. It doesn't have to be like your friends or your neighbors. It doesn't have to be, you know, if you find the right attorneys or you find the right process for you can actually fit you. It doesn't have to be what I was talking about in the beginning where you're both battling it out in court. So you can use, like we talked about, mediation to just having an attorney review documents. So just because someone else had a really bad experience, that doesn't mean that your experience is going to be bad. Just shop around.
Good
you know,
point. Yeah.
Talk to attorneys. Find someone that you want to share your, you know, financial information with, that you want to talk about your kids to, because that's the person that, you know, you're going to be relying on to, number one, give you information and help protect those things. So if you don't need someone, don't, you know, there are people out there who they market on aggression, but in family law, you don't always need that. You know, if like there's some real safety concern with a parent, then you fight, you know, but find someone who meets what you need.
Good point.
Not just looking for a litigator.
Maybe that's part of the in the very beginning stages when I'm thinking about it. Write a needs list to you personally. What do you really want? What do you need? I'm sorry. What do you need?
Right.
And from there, you can extract whether you need to be aggressive because there's a what am I trying to say? Like a safety issue at home, right? Or no, there's 2 children here, and they're very okay with making it work for the children, right? So then let's all sit down together, possibly. I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but yeah.
Mediation. Yeah. Or, hey, we just need someone to look at these documents. Then you find someone to do it. But I think that choosing the right person or choosing the right process is going to really impact how divorce turns out for you and how you feel about it. Right. So that's all I can. Okay. It's tough going through the process, and then also what I think is imperative for anybody is finding then those next people. So as a divorce attorney, I'm still talking to people about how to refinance their home or having someone to look over your finances. So you always want someone who can not just think about the divorce, but make sure you're going to be okay afterward. Yes. So I would always say if I'm talking to a family member, make sure you're thinking one step, do they have any referrals? Because then it makes the process of divorce even easier if I can pass off a case to someone I know who's really qualified. This person needs new financial advice. Can you help them? Yeah. That's a good point. I guess I would ask you, as I think of the do-it-yourself world again, they come in, and there's all these people they're going to need. They need a financial person. They're going to need maybe a real estate agent with the house, someone like me for the mortgage, a CPA, especially if they've never had these things. Right? Who knows? Yeah, because taxes are complicated the year of divorce, and they just don't think about it. A new babysitter, whatever, right? So do you think they're good at listening to you about that stuff and say, hey, these are the people you might help you well, or do they come in like know-it-alls, it's depends maybe. Sometimes people, a majority of the time, they listen. Okay. Here's a list of people, but unless they're not ready, then they won't. More of they want to know what they don't know a lot of the time. They don't want to not, but sometimes I experience more of delay of taking action because they're just overwhelmed. Sure. We were talking about that before we started filming. Yeah. It's another thing to do, and they just have so much going on. But the things that they're most pressing them, they'll work on right away. But the other referrals I give, if they just don't need it right away, they like to have it because it's something that they don't want to waste any more time on. I've already gone through this process. Latrice says, this accountant's great. That's who I'm calling. Right. So, but it might not be right away. I never thought about that. It's a good point. So they're overwhelmed. I just want to deal with whatever's pressing at the moment. I'll get to that later. Right. Yeah, interesting. When I talk to people myself, I call it Pandora's box that I open up. Because if you think about what I need to know. I need to know about debts. I need to know about income, assets. And then if there's anything negative, derogatory, I get to hear about why it is. If it's not their fault, it's the ex-spouse or the soon-to-be, you know what I mean? So it's very emotional in my conversations a lot of times. I'm very empathetic, I'm very patient, as you probably know, so but I can't help it, I have to ask these questions, right? I try my best not to create these triggers because I want to move them forward, like we're talking about. I'm here to help you, you hired me to help you. Move you forward, let's get you to the refinance of the new house that you want. But I need these answers, I need to understand what happened. And even talking to you, what's the plan, right? Is the goal to try to get X, new income, or someone's going to pay this debt or take over this debt? All that management's super important in my world. So yeah, and I think you do a good way of talking about it with our clients. Our clients also there are a lot of people don't like the word change, just because there's so much going on. And so if it's more of just... I never use the word change? I don't think you address it. You don't use it that way. I'm glad that you brought that up, so now I'll consciously try not to ever say it. No, I think, it's just a reaction for a lot of people, change. Why do I need to do that? Because they're going through just a rough time. So I think you're more of understanding what... The way you say it is not to make them feel like they're making this huge leap or change. It's just I can help you. I think you're more of... Yep, I can help you with that. Sometimes I look at it as I try not to add more stress to the entire mountain of stress that's happening right now, right? I'm trying to help you down the mountain, not keep going up it or whatever. So no, I've gotten that, and I've told you before that I give referrals to more than one person.
Sure.
And I'll call them with you on, especially mediation with you in the room.
For sure.
I did one not too long ago where I called a different broker before you, and then you called, and they're like, Josh, because the other person had a question. Like, they were kind of like, why would you do that? About like what they were doing with debt. And it was already embarrassing enough that for them that they had the debt. So then the way that question was answered, when you called back and I put you on speaker, they're like, oh yeah, it's definitely Josh who I'm going to work with. Yeah. Because it's embarrassing for some people to have it, but it's also, they don't want to remember that, just want to move forward. Not rehash that, because they've probably already been rehashing that in a room with an attorney.
Yeah, or Josh, I don't want your opinion.
Right.
Right, it's kind of how it comes off.
It was. It wasn't there was definitely a judgment in her voice.
When I talk to family members and friends, outside of work, they ask me about advice, just random stuff about mortgages. I get a lot of finance questions too, because they view me as a financial advisor sometimes. It's interesting. I also talk about how I watch the markets and everything too. But the thing I try to tell them is my opinion, but not be too aggressive on it. Only when they ask my opinion. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think it's the same thing with work. When people come to me, I try to give. I want to. I'm like, here's, because I'm like 16 years of doing it. Like clearly, I know probably a couple things that you should probably know this. But it's all about delivery, I think. Right. Like, be careful how you deliver it, because it can come off the wrong way, especially during the divorce process. Because it's very, very emotional. So, yeah.
So I think if people just recognize, when they're working with a divorced client, number one, there's a lot more stress around, but if giving more like clear direction, I think is easiest. And sometimes I'm trying to, when I'm referring people out, trying to make sure those people get that, because then they'll follow up with me like, well, what's going on? I'm like, there's a lot going on right now, so I'll follow up with them.
It's a team effort, right?
It is.
I mean, you think about it. You're the driver, and I'm just one of many people. You're an attorney, you maybe a financial neutral or planner or whoever's involved. Like, you have all these pieces.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's normally a lot going on. So sometimes I have a realtor right now that's frustrated with one of my clients. Like, what's going on? I'm like, well, he's been in and out of ICU. Oh no. But he has, in general, takes a long time. And so then, I'm happy that that's coming to me, because I get that, because you're just like, oh, don't you really want to list your house? And I'm like, he actually does, but even the judge on that case is like, what's taking so long for these people? I'm like, my client's in and out of the hospital. So even the judge is like, oh, because then you understand, because if you don't always understand the story, then...
So you're saying even the courts are human and the judge is human. Yeah, they get it.
They're like, oh, then that makes sense, Attorney Knight. I'm like, yes, we're trying our very best.
Right.
So.
That's good. That's good to hear. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks for coming by. I appreciate your advice and everything that you give to people. I know, if not one, tons of people will take this and use it, and hopefully they contact you too. We'll leave your contact info in the video stuff and in the podcast stuff too. So.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for coming by. So cool. That's it.